Hi, my name is Kathleen Hamilton, and I am the author of Terralepus and the book series. And today I'm going to be talking about Terralepus Honeyville High. And in Honeyville, in Honeyville High, Cupid attends high school where Emma, a fellow student, has a crush on Cupid. Emma's mother, Celeste, is the wife of Randolph, the mayor of Honeyville, who wants to run for governor. Celeste's brother Bruce belongs to the criminal underworld, and together they cause mayhem in Honeyville. Alright, so chapter 13. Alright. The time had come for Max and his family to go to the honorary dinner being held at the Honeyville General Hospital. Max had come home with the tuxedo rentals. He did decide to buy his own on the advice of Thomas. Max passed out the suits to Sam, Thomas, Greg, Timothy, and Cupid. They changed into them and waited downstairs for the girls. Finally, Bethany made her appearance in a green off-the-shoulder floor-length dress, the neckline plunging a bit. Her hair was pulled up, and she wore the necklace that Thomas had bought for her a while back. Thomas stood up and walked towards her. "Bethany," he whispered, "you're gorgeous." Bethany blushed. "Thank you, Thomas," she replied. Cassandra came next with an aquamarine-colored floor-length dress. It had one strap holding the top, and it gracefully clung to her form. Timothy smiled and embraced her. "You're so beautiful," he told her. Trixie came down with a violet floor-length gown. It had a plunging neckline on the form-fitting dress, as well as a long slit on the side. Cora came downstairs with a black sleeveless dress that hugged her form and fell a little past her knees. Her hair was pulled back and up. She smiled as Greg stood up and looked at her, grinning. Lily walked down the stairs in a red strapless floor-length dress that hugged her form. Its plunging neckline was traced with small white diamonds, and the back of her dress plunged down past her shoulder blades. She walked over to Cupid, who stared at her. "Well, what do you think?" she asked him. Cupid pulled at his collar. "Wow," he said, "you're unbelievably beautiful." Cupid looked away from her and towards the stairs where Jackie was descending. Max stared at her, mouth open. Jackie had pulled her hair up, and her royal blue strapless dress clung to her form. Max stood there as Jackie walked over. "Well?" she asked. Max embraced and kissed her. The teens started to groan and fuss. "Come on, Dad, we'll be late," said Sam. "Dad, let's go," said Thomas. "Daddy," said Lily, tugging at his coat. "Daddy, you can do this later," said Cora. "Come on, Daddy," said Cassandra. "Daddy," fussed Trixie, "later." Max stopped and looked around at his children and sighed. "I can't help it. Your mother is a beautiful woman." Jackie smiled at him. They stepped out of the house, and Bethany, Thomas, Cassandra, and Timothy left in Bethany's car. Everyone else got into Jackie's van and headed towards the hospital. When they arrived, Jackie parked and they got out. Max put his arm through Jackie's arm, and they proceeded towards the main entrance and headed to the large conference room where Mayor Turner was greeting guests. "Max Duncan," said Randolph, "it's good to see you tonight." "Thank you," said Max, shaking his paw. "Good to see you, too." "And who is this beautiful woman?" Randolph asked Max. "This gorgeous woman is my wife," replied Max. Jackie blushed from Max's compliment as Randolph shook her paw. "Come on in," said Randolph, waving his paw towards the room. Max and Jackie stepped in to see several fellow rabbits seated at their tables. The tables were covered in pale blue tablecloths and adorned with candles, surrounded by pine branches and miniature cut-out snowflakes. The lights had been dimmed except where the podium stood. Max and Jackie sat at one of the round tables. Cassandra, Timothy, Trixie, and Sam joined them. Cora, Greg, Bethany, Thomas, Cupid, and Lily sat at another table. Celeste watched them enter from the side and leaned over to Emma. "I heard Cupid is loaded." "Where did you hear that from?" asked Emma. John was looking at some jewelry at the mall, and she overheard him say he could afford to buy Lily any necklace she wanted, said Celeste. "I don't know if I buy that," said Emma. "He dresses pretty casual at school." "That's how rich people are," her mother said. "They're eccentric. They don't spend their money." Then why would he want to buy a poor girl a diamond necklace, Mom? I think Dawn heard something else, replied Emma. Well, you should try to get him interested in you, said her mother, just in case. Mom, I'm not interested anymore. I'm seeing Thaddeus, said Emma. Poor boy Thaddeus. How's he going to take care of you when you grow up? She said to Emma. Well, for one, I'll work a job, Mom. We could make it well enough, replied Emma. A job? Why would you want to work a job? Asked her mother. Because I don't want to get in the line of business that you're in, Mom, replied Emma before she walked away. Celeste raised her eyebrows. She had been quiet for over a month, and the taste of thievery made her mouth water the more she thought about it. She hadn't talked to her brother in a while, worried that the police might tap her line looking for any connection between her brother and the robberies. She couldn't wait for the election to be over with. Her husband had been busy campaigning, as she had put the dinner party together to help with his generous reputation. Soon a quartet of musicians started to play. The waiters brought out salads and drinks for everyone. These are beautiful place settings, said Max, admiring the dish that the salad came in, and raising his fork up to study it. I wonder how much it would cost to get something like this. They're probably rentals, said Sam, studying his glass of water. The waiters brought out soft rolls for everyone. Max grabbed 3 and juggled them, dropping 2 on his plate. Daddy, this is not the time or the place, said Trixie. Max looked at Trixie and passed her a roll. Trixie rolled her eyes and took the roll. Here, honey, said Max to Jackie, take this roll. Thank you, dear, she replied, smiling at Max. The waiters brought out the main course. What's this? Asked Max. It is fingerling potatoes, honey pecan glazed baby carrots, and stuffed shells with tomato au jus, replied the waiter. Finger potatoes and stuffed seashells? Asked a perplexed Max. The waiter looked at him funny. I'll explain it to him, said Jackie, grabbing Max's arm and looking at the waiter. Yes, ma'am, replied the waiter. He walked off as Max looked at her. Is it as weird as it sounds? He asked. No, it's actually just carrots and potatoes with a fancy name and a great flavor added to them, she replied. Oh, said Max. Mayor Turner walked up to the podium. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we have gathered together to honor the men and women who have served Honeyville General Hospital for many years. It is an honor to be here with you. Several cameras clicked as the media stood to the back taking pictures of the mayor and several of the guests. Without your service to this hospital, the quality of care would not be as good as it is today. Honeyville thanks you, said Mayor Turner. Max listened, but was continually distracted by his wife. He would look at her and occasionally at the mayor. He would lean over and whisper something to Jackie, and she would smile and look at him nose to nose. Mayor Turner started to pass out the awards. There were 25 years, 30 years, even up to 45 years of service to the hospital. Max Duncan, called Mayor Turner. He looked at Max, who was leaning over, whispering to his wife. Max, called Mayor Turner again. Max looked up and stood up. He walked over to Mayor Turner and shook his paw before receiving a wooden plaque from him. Thank you, Max, said Mayor Turner. Thank you, sir, replied Max. Max turned and walked back to the table. Cupid put his fork down and leaned over to Lily. I need to go, he said. To the bathroom, she replied. No, I'm being summoned, he said. Now, she whispered back. You don't even have your bag with you. It's actually behind me, tucked under my coattails. This isn't a good time, whispered Lily. Actually, it's the only time, he replied. They're getting ready to go into 2 separate directions and they're soulmates. Lily quietly groaned. Come with me, she said. Lily stood up and excused herself from the group. They stepped out the door of the room and started to walk down the hallway. Where do we need to go? She asked. 4th floor, replied Cupid, loosening his tie. I need to find a place to change without being seen. Lily looked at him. It's a rental, remember? He said. You're right, she replied. Maybe we can slip into Daddy's office. They walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor and walked down the hall until they saw his office. The lights had been dimmed on the hallway so that the patients could sleep, so nobody paid as much attention to them. Lily grabbed the handle of the door and jiggled it, but it was locked. She atomically manipulated the lock and it opened. Cupid looked at her in wonder. They walked in and shut the door. Cupid passed Lily his tie and jacket. He took off the cummerbund that was around his waist and removed his shirt. He pulled out his wings and turned his bag around. He cracked open the door and peeked out. "I'll be back," he whispered, leaving the room. Lily left the door cracked open. She looked around the darkened office of her dad. It was neat and tidy. His medical books were lined up on the shelves. On the walls were his certificates stating his degrees that he had earned at college, a fraternity that he had joined, and a picture of his family. On his desk was a picture of her mother. In the corner of his office was a life-size skeleton of a rabbit. Lily stared at it for a moment. She heard Cupid flutter outside the door as he quickly came in and shut the door. "Lily, I've been spotted. Quick, help me get this stuff back on," he fussed. Lily grabbed his shirt and passed it to him. She grabbed the coat and he threw it on. She pulled his bag back around to where his coattails hung as he tried to button his shirt. The door jiggled and a security officer stepped in. Lily grabbed Cupid's shirt and coat and tried to pull them together. They both laughed nervously as the woman looked at them. Thomas looked at Bethany. "How long does it take Cupid to go to the bathroom?" "You mean with Lily tagging along?" she asked. "I don't know." The waiters brought out the dessert. It was an ice cream dessert with a topping on it. The desserts were set down on the tables, and the waiter stood next to Max with a blowtorch and lit his dessert on fire, toasting the topping. Max's eyes grew wide. "They burn it?" The doors to the room opened up, and the security guard walked in, dragging Lily and Cupid with his shirt hanging open. The camera started clicking. "Who belongs to these two?" asked the security guard. Cupid stood up straight and started to button his shirt. "Uh-oh," muttered Greg, looking at Cora, who had covered her mouth. Max slowly raised his paw. "They would belong to me," he replied to a silent audience. The security guard walked them over to the table. "Are you her father?" she asked. "Yes," replied Max. "They were in your office," she replied. "This one was all over him. You need to watch your children better." Max stared at the security guard and raised his eyebrows. The security guard left, and Max looked at Lily, who was standing there. "Go eat your food, Lily," said Max. Lily sat down. Cupid buttoned his coat. "Lily, help me with this tie," he whispered. She reached over and fixed his tie. When they were done, they turned and faced Cora, Greg, Bethany, and Thomas. Lily started to eat, and Cupid looked at them sheepishly. "Honey, couldn't you have waited until you went home?" asked Bethany to Cupid. "I was just doing my job," said Cupid, stuffing a carrot in his mouth. "I couldn't get my wings out in that suit." Cora dug into her dessert and took a bite. She looked around, concerned, but everyone had gone back to their dinner. Max walked over to their table. "I'll be back," he told them. "I'm going to show your mother my office, since she's never been in it before." "One of your former patients is still there," replied Lily, looking at her father. "Tell him I said hi." Max grinned, knowing she was referring to his skeleton. He and Jackie quietly left, and they headed upstairs. He unlocked his door and shut it behind him, locking it. He flipped the switch, and the lights came on. "Oh, Max, this is nice," said Jackie, looking around. He stood there as she walked around. "This must be your friend," she said, as she grabbed the bony finger on the skeleton. "Yes, I guess you could say that," he replied. He walked over. "Hey, would you like to see a distal interphalangeal bone connect an iliac crest and a humerus bone?" "Sure," replied Jackie. Max poked the side of her hip and ran his finger up to her shoulder and poked it. She giggled as it tickled her. She stepped in and hugged her husband, who was smiling at her. "You think the kids will be okay for a few minutes?" she asked. "Probably not," he replied. She looked at him. "Yes, they'll be fine." Downstairs, the dinner party had finished. The teenagers got together and looked around. "The most logical place would probably be Daddy's office," said Cassandra. "Great," said Thomas. "We'll never make it home." "Oh, yes, we will," said Trixie. "Come on." They all headed up to the third floor and walked to Max's office. "Can I help you?" asked one of the nurses. "We just came to get our dad out of his office," replied Cora. She walked over to his door and knocked. The door unlocked, and Cora walked in to see her mother sitting on Max's desk in front of Max, who was sitting in his chair. "Hey, kids, is it over?" he asked. Yes, Daddy, replied Lily. We were just talking, started Max, and your mother helped me hang up the plaque so I wouldn't have to do it on Monday. Shut that door, Cupid. Cupid shut the door and looked at Max. Tell me what happened, said Max. Well, started Cupid. Dr. Parker and Nurse Annie were up on the 4th floor, and this was her last night to work. She was transferring to another hospital. She and the doc got along real well for a while, and he didn't know if he should say anything to her or not because he really liked her. She liked him, but since he didn't make any moves, she figured it was pointless to stay. So you had to go, replied Max. Yes, said Cupid. Except that security is extremely good in this hospital. It didn't take long for the security guard to find me. How did you get into my office? Asked Max. Lily raised her paw and manipulated the door to open it and then shut it. Max looked at her. I believe you, Cupid. I couldn't imagine you two getting into any trouble now. Could I? He asked. Cupid looked at Lily and grinned before looking at Max and getting serious. No, sir, I guess you couldn't. Max raised his eyebrows and Cupid grinned. Let's go home, said Max. He stood up and looked at his wife and smiled. She embraced and kissed him as the teenagers groaned and filed out of Max's office. Let's go, Mom, called Thomas. Jackie grinned and pulled her enamored husband out of the office. They walked towards the lobby, and Cupid heard soft music playing from the speakers. He grabbed Lily and danced with her for a moment before heading out to the parking lot. Once they arrived home, Cupid changed out of his tuxedo and into his clothes. He threw on his coat and hat and walked over to Max. Mr. Duncan, thank you for everything, he said, grabbing his paw and shaking it. You're welcome, replied Max. Have a good trip home. Goodbye, Lily, Cupid said to her. Goodbye, sweetheart, she whispered, as she leaned in to kiss him. Cupid left for home. Cora walked Greg outside. Honey, said Greg to Cora, I'd like you to come over to my parents' house for dinner tomorrow night. She looked at him. Okay. Greg held her paws in his. Cora, you look beautiful tonight, but I want you to know I've always seen you as beautiful. Cora smiled at Greg. I will see you later, said Greg. He kissed Cora and climbed into his truck and left. Cora went inside and saw Bethany and Timothy were still there. Bethany was trying to drag her brother out the door. You can see Cassandra tomorrow, she fussed at Timothy. Bye, Cassandra, Timothy said, as his sister slowly inched him towards the door. Cassandra walked over to him and kissed him. I'll stop by and get you tomorrow, okay? Okay, he replied. Bethany and Timothy walked out the door. Max flopped down on his bed in his pajamas. I'm sure glad all that excitement is over, he said. The dinner was nice, but sometimes I don't know what to think of that boy. Cupid? Asked Jackie. Yeah, replied Max. I know what he does, but other people assume something different. We never raised our children to be like what they suggest. Don't worry, replied Jackie. I'm sure it will all be fine. Anyway, my book series, Terralepus, and the other books can be found at Amazon.com. You can also go to my website, www.terralepus.com, and check out all the books there. And you can go to my Facebook page, Terralepus, and see what I have. Anyway, take care and see you in the stars.